Hi there. I want to introduce Reed Harkness, who is the director of the film Sam Now, which won Best Feature Documentary at last year's film festival. And I'm starting out by asking him how he became a filmmaker. So you said in the film that you found a Super 8 camera in the garage and just started filming. Is that where your wanting to be a filmmaker came from, that you found a camera, or was that a happy coincidence that came after the desire?
It's a good question. I feel like I always secretly wanted to be a filmmaker. Like that was like very, very early stuff. I remember watching certain kinds of programs on television in the US in the 80s and 90s, and I remember seeing like claymation specials, and I would be like, wow, how did they make that? And I would try to build little sets to like try to do my own, but I didn't have a camera. And then when I first got my hands on cameras, it was like my grandmother's VHS camera, which she had in a um, this cool old floral suitcase, and we would just shoot these goofy little videos. Usually, it involved like boys fighting and superheroes and all kinds of goofy stuff. And then the evolution for me came with like what is the jump to making real films, which I kind of explore in the movie. What does real filmmaking mean? And it's like my initial jump is like thinking like art films, and like I seen the 400 Blows as a teenager, and I'd seen uh Michael Apted's Up series as a teenager, and I was like, oh my gosh, what if I sort of got into this thing and used my brother as a subject to like kind of look at coming of age and youth and these elements of boyhood. Boyhood became a movie like midway through my process, and I was like, oh no, Richard Linklater's maybe stealing my idea, but turned out to be a really different thing. Um, and I think that there's all these places where I have like questioned what I am or what I could be in my life, and the movie kind of explores that. It's like I am a filmmaker. I wanted to make films, that idea. You see the evolution of me trying and then reevaluating until I have this ultimately this film Sam Now. It's a really terrifying idea to just like put that out into the world, but it's also really exciting and just so nourishing to see that it's received by audiences. Audiences have let me know that they feel this too. I totally get that from London Breeze. You guys called it best feature documentary, and that just means so much.
You never wanted to be in front of the camera yourself. You just wanted to make the films.
I wasn't really the I think in families you get like these different characters that emerge, and it's probably for like how we get attention from our parents, but like Sam was like the natural performer. He was just like the goofball, the comedian, the clown. And I was the introverted, kind of weird artist, outside the box thinker, probably very neurodivergent. And I just when I'm on camera, it's really interesting to watch. But um I think a version of me on camera would be like a whole other thing. It's like, I mean, and I'm in it a little bit, but like, okay, here's the other part to why Sam. Um I was a teenager. I had just gone through this crazy process of middle school and high school. And so much happens in those years, right? Like your body changes, your understanding of relationships change. And I was curious what it was going to be like for Sam to go through that phase of life, having just experienced it myself. And having tons of feelings about the hardships and pain of it all. And in the movie, you see this like long-term view of what growth looks like for Sam. And it's like a 25-year thing where it's like in one phase of his life, he's like, I'm doing great. I'm doing so great. And then like in another phase of his life, he's like, I wish I had like thought about things. I wish I had processed things like my brother Jared did.
So did you, in the film, I thought, because you started fairly young in the grand scheme of things, to when you decided, let's go look for your mom and film the proceedings. Um, how you came up with some pretty great questions for all of the relatives and friends and stuff. Did you study journalism, or did you study filmmaking, or are you just a natural question asker?
Probably the last thing. I'm probably more of the natural question asker. I didn't go to film school. I was actually journaling about this morning. I felt as a young person, 18 through 20, I felt like I was in a total nowhere land of like nothing could possibly work for me. And so I started to take things into my own hands and I was like, hey, I want to be a filmmaker. Why not just make films? So I see a camera there on the shelf. Let's see what I can do with that camera. What's crazy about Sam now is it starts as I want to make films. I want to make films, and I'm working with my brother to make films. And then there's a real shift in the movie where Sam says, you know, that he wants to make the Blue Panther finds his mom. And at that point, it's like, oh, I see how this whole filming thing that we've been doing, this whole film project we've been doing, which was up till now all experimental, fictional scenarios. Um, there's a way for this to become something real in our lives, and so I use it as a tool basically to open doors, open communication with my family members, and I treat it from the same inspiration, just as I would be inspired to go make a shot. Here's a great shot. I say, what do I need to know in order to help my brother find his missing mom? And I just continue from there. So the contract I basically made with my brother was, I'll help you find your missing mom, and we'll use filmmaking as a way to get there. That's a contract that lasted a very long time because even in actually finding her physically, it didn't feel to me like she was truly found. It felt like we went on a journey and something big happened, but then there's way more to what's undiscovered here, and it has to do with family secrecy. It has to do with mental health. It has to do with us being too young to understand. It's so confusing, but we all know that these things exist in our family. We all know that there's like deep pain that is involved with generational patterns, but rarely, I think, does it happen that it's addressed and like um brought into focus.
And oh boy, did it take some courage to put all that together. I mean, when you first embarked on the let's go find your mum, um, I don't know whether you would have pictured, is that going to be a 5-week thing, or is that going to be a 5-month thing, or will we ever find her, or, you know, but then as well, on top of that, what you found, like you said, kind of unfolded into all different stories over many, many years. And then you went on 25 years later and pulled it all together and made a film and let the world in on this whole personal thing. I mean, what did you expect? And what happened when it turned out to be a never-ending kind of journey?
It's so interesting. I mean, looking back, this is 2003 when we were on this road trip. Um, and I remember having this mantra of no expectations, like don't have any expectations at the time. Yet expectations creep in, and so there's this point in the movie where we're on the road trip, we get to our destination, which is this professor who we're gonna meet on his office hours, and we're gonna like hopefully he's gonna like give us some intel. We get down there and he's gone. It's our last kind of hope for making contact. But we go to the beach and we're standing up there on this like desolate beach. It's middle of winter in Southern California, and I felt so much like, what am I doing here? What responsibility am I taking with my younger brother? And what could go wrong? And could this be hurtful? And all along the way in making this documentary, I've had to ask myself those questions. And these are really hard things to reconcile for any filmmaker, for any documentarian. But um, with your own family, I think that you have more opportunity to meditate, and because you're like, I plan to have this relationship like for my whole life, right? So like it's not like I'm just like I'm coming into another situation and filming it and then leaving. These are really important relationships to me, and that requires like really special handling.
I guess where did the switch come then when you thought, oh, maybe this should be in the public
Yeah.
domain, sort of?
This is a good question. You know, what when should a work be in the public domain? I played the role in my family of like noticing the elephant in the room and being like, you guys look at this. Like that happens in the documentary. It's a scene where I like stand up in front of my family and I'm like, you guys, can't you see what's happening here? I think it's the same with releasing a work like this. I recognize as a person, as an artist, that not just my family needs me to communicate with them. I recognize that this is something that is really universal, and that it's for other families and individuals. And I also recognize that the loneliness that I feel and the loneliness that I know my family members feel in their pain um, is somehow set free, even if in a little way, by the release of the movie. It's a big leap to make. It's a really big jump, and it's really scary, you know? I wouldn't have done it without the tremendous amount of care that went in to to the whole of the work and the way in which it was released. Um, I think that there's some times where something needs to be said, and in this case, it was said through film. It's weird to be that person, right? And I still won't know. I can't say with surety that there won't be repercussions or ways in which this comes back to haunt me. But right now, I'll say that wholly, it's been really good. Um, the impact I've experienced with my family and the conversations we've had around it have been very good, very opening.
Once you went from, the Blue Panther finds his mum, to, oh, maybe we can make a thing out of this that could be released. That switched. You must have had to gather a bunch of people and a bunch of money, and how did that all work?
How did that all work? I mean, it's so interesting because it's like this is like many years and decades are happening. So in the year 2015, I was going through a divorce and had a tremendous amount of grief energy, and I poured some of that into working on the movie. Um, and I just a lot of things were going coming up for my brother too around this time, and so we had a lot of sort of heart to heart conversations, and this is sort of like what you start seeing in the movie. Um, the part of fundraising for this documentary is really interesting. I raised very limited funds very early on. Um, but then we got what's called ITVS open call funding, and that really set things into motion as far as like, okay, this is going to be real. This is going to be seen by lots of people. And I have money to do what I need to do. And that's a different thing than if you're bootstrapping and you're like, I don't have a dollar to even I can't even, like pay for media or whatever. And in this case, it's like I had money to do what I needed to do. I had two editors working full time for about 3 years to make this movie. Jason Reed, Darren Lund, I could not have done that without my two editors. And we worked tirelessly. We cut every scene 100 different ways. Um, we really like I really did a lot of work just listening to my heart and what is the language that I've learned with my brother and what is the most authentic way I can present that. Um, we searched far and wide for a composer for Sam now. Like, oh my gosh, oh, I can't tell you the amount of people. Stephen Malcolmus from Pavement, had lunch with him. We were looking at the guy from Granddaddy. We were looking at all these independent musicians who like were around in the 90s and like, just wanted to evoke this sort of real 90s vibe. Um, we considered like way too many musicians in this. Like I had a Spotify playlist that was like 300 or maybe it was like no, it's way more than that. It's like 2 days worth of music that was reference music for Sam Now. Um, I can talk and talk and talk about this, but the ultimate thing that landed, one of the musicians that um, I was really inspired by and was always on the playlist was Roger Neal. Roger Neal had done the soundtrack for 20th Century Women. Um, really, really moving soundtrack, really beautifully moving soundtrack that like you listen to it and it just draws up this whole world just listening to that music. And he watched an early cut of Sam Now. He loved it. We couldn't afford him. And he said, I'm on board anyway. And that kind of connection is like the thing I learned about filmmaking in this process is that there will be people that will emerge that will lift you up, that will just help make the thing ultimately better. And music was something that was like so important and also such a blank slate in this movie. And when we found Roger Neal and when I heard his first sketches, I was like, oh my gosh, now this has like this whole other energy in life, something I had never even thought or could imagine because I'm not a musical person. I'm not somebody that composes myself. Um, those sketches just like really helped me think, helped me to understand how the story could go together. I completely loved that collaboration, and he's a dear friend, and I can't say enough for how much music is important to film, um, and that was just a really beautiful experience in collaboration. And we made something that I really stand behind as a film that I love it. I'm so happy with it. I'm so proud of just making it, just doing this long-term dream that I've had.
So then I guess what comes then, you decide to put it into festivals? Were you advised to do that, or is that you just knew that you needed to do that, or
Yeah, Jason Reed, my producing partner and one of my editors, he's done a bunch of documentary features, and so he's been in the festival pipeline for a while now, and had understood things a lot better than I had. I had done some shorts and I had done some limited festivals, but um, I hadn't been involved in too many, and so this was my first big go at it, and that process is really interesting. It's a very strategic thing, you know. You really want to think about where you premiere, where you get like who you're showing it to, who your film's for. This is a film that happens to be about a Seattle family, Seattle, Washington. You know, like will it be relatable in in London or Zurich or you know or Memphis, Tennessee? You know, like it could just be uh, totally fall flat. But turns out the opposite is true. It it's a very relatable storyline, and the characters and the family members generally people really connect with. There's so many different ways to connect with those characters.
how did you go about choosing which festivals, and how did you come across Barnes slash Breeze?
Okay, Festival Formula is a little organization that we found along the way. They approached us and they're like, hey, we can help you with your festival strategy. And they're like, we think you should apply to these festivals, you know, with this budget that you have. And we didn't have very much budget. So we were just like, okay, these and these and these and these. There are so many festivals in the world. And we put everything into making the film, stepping outside of into the release of the film, showing up at film festivals is like a whole other thing. It's like a lot of work just to submit, and it's a lot of work to go to festivals. It's a lot of work to be out there promoting your film. So that was a learning curve for me. I was that independent filmmaker that like didn't have any connections to anyone or any means to make film, yet I did. And so my heroes were independent filmmakers all along the way. Um, and to be recognized by film festivals that honor and support independent film really meant a lot, especially in an age where it's funny, I can say in an age where, because I made a multi-decade project, um, in this time, right? In this time now where all the streamers are have a monopoly over cinema, theaters are dying, art house is dying. I really found this special place to still exist in film festivals. Film festivals still have the power to bring forward work that you might not see on the mainstream channels. It's these places where the judges and the curators are really thinking about like what is next, what is interesting, what is something that we haven't seen before. And I'm so grateful to have been a recipient of that kind of notice. I'm sad that I didn't make it to London Breeze. Sam now had a really long festival run, and I burned out. I got to a place where I was like, I can't uh, I can't continue to be on the road because I have four kids, and this is another part of of being a filmmaker. I think that is really tricky because you're kind of almost required to go and promote your movie, especially if you're emerging. Then you got to really do it. But I'm kind of in this weird place where it's like, hey, I'm both emerging and I'm a dad, and I feel really proud of the work. I feel really proud of Sam now. But probably what's bringing me the most, you know, kind of zest for life is my kids.
And if there's one thing that your film addresses, it's the effect of a parent on children.
Yeah,
whether they're
true,
present or
true,
not. So,
true, right. I have to like learn from the movie.
what was the feeling of winning I guess in a festival right across the world in London?
When I heard that we won the London Breeze Film Festival in the documentary competition, I can't tell you what that felt like because it was almost too much. It was almost like the world had been too nice. I think that this was our 10th best documentary award at film festivals. And when you go up and you receive your first award for your film, it it just it takes your breath away. I felt totally swept up with emotion around like, how is this possible? So many other beautiful films have been made, and why me? Why this one? Um, all these others are equally as good, if not better. Um, and then the second time you go up and you get an award, and then you're like, oh my gosh, this happened again? What? Like, this is really getting real. Okay, the third time, it's like real. It's like, no, it wasn't a dream. You're actually getting these awards. Like, people are actually noticing this work. Many juries now have noticed this work. When we got to 5 Best Documentary Awards, I was like, oh my God, this is too much. This is like, I started handing the mic to other people on my team. Why don't you receive this? Um, I also got to a point where I wouldn't say numb, but I got to a point where I got to this place where these awards are meaning so much, but it also means that somebody else is not getting an award. I also got to a point where, that was getting to my head a little bit. I I I received a lot of recognition for Sam Now, and I don't know that it was wholly good for me. I think that as a human being, as a parent, as a person, that I received my fair share and then some extra. And the extra bit was kind of like pushing me into a headspace of like competitive thinking and somebody who, you know, wants to like push it further. And I think that that stuff is not necessarily who I am. But you know what? Each of them are so special to me. I've never been to the London Breeze Film Festival, but now I want to go. I want to go to see what it's like because you guys recognized me. You recognized my work. You recognized Sam Now, and that holds a really special place in my heart. For anyone that is applying to London Breeze Film Festival, I just say like, hey, whether you live in the US or in London or somewhere else across the globe, this is a festival that really supports and encourages um, many different voices and emerging work. I had no idea that a London audience would connect with this story about my family from Seattle. And it happened to win Best Documentary Feature. So anything can happen, right? I think London Breeze is one of those really fantastic special film festivals that support outside the box filmmakers like myself. And I don't know if any of you guys relate, but like it takes so much just to make your film. Um, there's something really special about the places that hold you, that recognize you, and I think London Breeze is one of those places. I would encourage you to submit.